The 3.7, you round it up. In the 2015 sitting of the is worrying.
Thank you, Mr. Holness. Your rebuttal, Mrs. Simpson-Miller.
I don't know what transparency Mr. Holness is talking about. Because in terms of corruption, as Minister of Labour, I was the one who prosecuted. As Minister of Labour, I was the one who prosecuted. I was the one who prosecuted. And so I don't know what transparency you're talking about, because I am sure that as a Minister of Government and Prime Minister, I did everything I could. It's bigger than a cabinet.
So, what do you make of Portia's criticism that the Golden government looked out for themselves first? Can these people be trusted?
And this is very serious.
And in performance in mathematics
the performance
worrying.
and the results from our education system, then clearly the idea of accountability must be seriously into this transformation framework.
In
Very serious.
So Dr. Peter Phillips has been the man charged with the important task of handling the country's finances.
This is very serious.
Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller, while standing by her selections, warned the new ministers that others are waiting in the wings if they fail to
The Prime
perform.
Minister says her team will be guided by three fundamental principles: participation, accountability, and responsibility, and there will be zero tolerance to corruption.
This is very serious. Increased poverty. The poverty levels are high. And tighter fiscal space. My administration will not engage in a blame game. We will present the facts to the Jamaican people based on rigorous analysis.
And in performance in mathematics is worrying.
For withdraw $100
is worrying.
of $1,000
is
$1.
worrying.
No, I was figuring $100. 10 cents. 10 cents. Withdrawal of $1,000, $1. For withdrawal of $400, $400. And
in any other country with a prime minister that had any decency or dignity or understanding of her job, she would have fired that minister long ago.
$400,000 would be $4,000.
No, $400.
$400.
He then tried again.
Let me go through it again. $1. For withdrawal of $100,000, it would be $10.
The second time wasn't quite the charm. He still got something wrong. It's actually $100 to withdraw $100,000, not $10.
In any other country with a prime minister that had any decency or dignity or understanding of her job, she would have fired that minister long ago.
And what is this comment from the prime minister?
That we as black people realize
We
are going to get progress, that we must start to use our resources in wise ways.
And innovative ways to stem the waste of public resources. And this is very serious.
The fact is that there is a principle of collective government, responsibility, collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. Collective responsibility.
Commentator and columnist Kevin O'Brien Chang argues the Prime Minister should speak further on the issue instead of leaving it to her Finance Minister.
This is where the buck stops, you know. It can't be just my you are the elected leader, Mr. Simpson-Miller. Let us hear your thoughts about it.
And for those calling for the tax to be withdrawn, the Prime Minister was non-committal.
I can't say that.
says a better strategy would have been for the government to strengthen its efforts to increase tax compliance.
In a country with a prime minister that had any decency or dignity or understanding of her job, she would have fired that minister long ago.
Opposition spokesman on finance, Audley Shaw, has flayed the government over aspects of the $6.7 billion tax package announced last week. Mr. Shaw, who was contributing to the budget debate today, was particularly critical of the levy on withdrawals.
The outrage from some Jamaicans which followed the finance minister's presentation of his $540 billion expenditure budget created an almost palpable expectation for the opposition spokesperson's response.
Will the financial institutions now charge an administrative cess, Mr. Minister? Have you, in your due diligence, before introducing this tax, did you have a discussion with the financial institutions to find out whether they are going to carry out the task of collecting $2.25 billion on your behalf from individual workers and customers across this land and give you that money without charging somebody for it?
He told the Minister of Finance who will have to bear the brunt of those service charges.
What will those additional charges be? On whose backs will those charges be placed? Is it the consumer again? Of course it is the consumer. What about a business that operates in more than one bank? What about a business that has the credit card collected through one bank and he has to transfer from the credit card account over to the other bank from which he does other business? He has to pay a withdrawal charge for that. Who's going to pay that? You think that the businessman will absorb that cost? When a lawyer manages client's account and he has to pay fees on that, it's going to be passed on all the time. They will, nobody, no lawyer, no businessman, nobody going to take this extra cost sitting down. They're going to pass. Whose backs will those charges be placed? Is it the consumer again? Of course it is the consumer.
And Integrity, Cappy, has called for a show of unity against the proposed withdrawal tax. Cappy has deemed the tax as oppressive and unconscionable and says it will prove inimical to the growth agenda as it will send the wrong message to potential investors. The group adds that the defensive argument being purveyed by some that this is a negligible amount and therefore will not adversely impact working class Jamaicans is only aimed at obfuscating.
In our political history, it is a rare opportunity to be given a second chance to lead.
I have to say to my leader and leader of the opposition and to thank him for taking a chance with me one more time.
It was then on to the big one, the proposed tax on withdrawals from financial institutions to take effect on June 1 this year. It is part of an attempt by the government to raise some $6.685 billion of additional revenue.
You know, usually when you go into the ATM machine, the Ministry of National Security would warn you, take a look around your surroundings before you go into the machine room. But little do we know that now you look around, you don't see anybody. You go into the machine room, and then the staff that's waiting for you in there.
Mr. Shaw argued that if this proposed tax is allowed to go ahead, the banking business could suffer, as Jamaicans will revert to under their mattress-type savings.
You establish a payment system for public sector workers that require everyone to have an account at a financial institution. Everybody who never used to have an account, then better go learn to open an account and bring out your ID and sign up your paper and have your account. Otherwise you can't get your transfer, your money, your pay can't come.
You have a budget that you must finance and there's a gap. And we have examined all the options. This was the least disruptive of the
minister has come with a tax of his own to tax withdrawals. Shame.
Mr. Shaw then backed up his criticism of the minister's budget with proposals on how to raise the needed revenue without adding extra weight to the backs of an already overburdened working class.
The government should seek to identify areas of expenditure that can be tightened up. These include foreign travel, and small again.
Mr. Holness was, among other things, asking Mrs. Simpson Miller for a tally on government travels and the benefits.
I remember we had an extended debate about giving the 7 days. I understand that the Prime Minister will be traveling again.
The lesson of this election is more importantly be accessible.
And the question of the size of the cabinet has re-emerged as an issue now that the Prime Minister has named 20 members. Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller defended the numbers today, but in the past she complained that a cabinet smaller than her own was too big.
It was an argument Portia Simpson Miller made when the People's National Party was in opposition.
Cannot be calling on the country to brace itself for hard times. And the government is not bracing itself for hard times. Increased poverty. The poverty levels are high. And tighter fiscal space. My administration insists on accountability. From our past, absorb the lessons and go forward. We only need to look back to confirm from where we have come and to correct and weaknesses or errors as we look to the future. That is the way of progress. This is the largest cabinet ever. In the cabinet, it's not in my cabinet now. It's bigger than my cabinet. A big whatnot.
Expenditures from the budget.
The size of the cabinet has re-emerged as an issue now that the Prime Minister has named 20 members.
To try to look at a number that would satisfy the concerns of big government. An 18-member cabinet does not necessarily signify big
Mrs.
government.
Simpson Miller herself, the new People's National Party cabinet is 20 We put the question of size first to Dr. Peter Phillips, who argued that it's in keeping with the guidelines of constitutional reform.
This is the largest cabinet ever.
I think it is certainly among some of the smaller that we have had.
Mrs. Simpson Miller also defended the size of the cabinet when we interviewed her after the swearing-in ceremony.
Political commentator and trade Helene Davis-White prized the size.
I expected a smaller cabinet because of the fact that there was some criticism of the Bruce Golding-led cabinet, where I think it was 18 or 19 persons at that time, and it was felt by Mrs. Simpson Miller then that it was a large cabinet. So I expected a smaller cabinet.
It's not in my cabinet now. It's bigger than my cabinet.
Political commentator Shalman Scott disagrees that size matters.
Given an opportunity to get grooming. Given an opportunity to get grooming.
This is the largest cabinet ever in the country. It's not in my cabinet now. It's bigger than my cabinet.
It was August 2009, almost 2 years into the Bruce Golding administration, which then had an 18-member cabinet. The new cabinet is the largest in recent years. Prime Minister Andrew Holness's short-lived cabinet was 17 strong. Bruce Golding's 18.
The country should expect over time for other young members to receive similar exposure.
In math.
In our political history, it is a rare opportunity to be given a second chance to lead.
Mrs. Simpson Miller, your cabinet colleagues told the country last year that you weren't capable of running the country. Shouldn't the country then accept their own assessment of you?
I agree with you.
Jamaica's leading election polls show the JLP ahead of the PNP.
That is the way of progress.
Discontent with Simpson Miller's leadership is not new.
say I'm missing in action. All who saying I'm missing in action, mission in action. We don't have no one done in the PNP. We have one leaders.
This has prompted renewed discussions about Portia Simpson Miller's lack of competence and ability. Peter Phillips, you'll recall, was reported in WikiLeaks telling a U.S. official that Portia was a disaster, adding that he would not serve in a Simpson Miller-led government, and I quote, "It would simply be too distasteful."
We won. The one before the last. The one before the last. Was not credible, and we were chastised. Then came the budget for 2020. Yes. Or 9 or 10. Or 10 or 11. And we were told again, and remember, and
distasteful.
Increased poverty. The poverty levels are high, and tighter fiscal space. My administration. We are doing less with more money.
Former People's National Party cabinet minister today told Gordon House that he's not convinced the party made enough of a difference in the lives of the poorest Jamaicans in nearly 20 years in office.
Katie Knight was contributing to a debate on a motion brought by his colleague Norman Grant.
Archibald Gordon reports.
Just about every senator rose in support of Norman Grant's motion.
That the Senate call on the government of Jamaica to review, re-examine and relaunch on a national scale the Values and Attitudes program.
His opposition colleague Katie Knight wasn't convinced that was enough. He said Jamaicans won't want to hear about values and attitudes if they live in squalor. And he said he wasn't convinced the administration of which he had been a part for about 20 years had done enough to change the circumstances of the poorest.
My deepest regret .
King illegal forest, 2 pig wild kill in it is. What? I mean, don't you know? It is illegal to...
My deepest regret.
But we have been there before, and we managed it. We managed the IMF, our dealings with the IMF in a different way. And that was why we had 12 consecutive successful performance review from the IMF. We warned, and you must all not forget, the budget debates. We warned, the one before the last, that it was not credible. Like that, I think we have been, and so we cannot accept any responsibility for the bad management, the mismanagement rather than but we not informing the country as to what was happening. And when the opposition asked questions about it,
deepest regret.
Treated as if had no right to be defending the interest of the Jamaican people or to act as a responsible opposition. Cursed out you.
Tax withdrawals. Shame. Shame.
Failed to adequately explain how it is you're funding free health care for children.
Well, we're funding the health care from the budget.
Money. Find money? Sister P, what kind of answer that?
Mr. Simpson Miller as Prime Minister, with respect, that's not an adequate explanation. Unless you're telling us that you had money hanging around that was being wasted.
No, we have no money hanging around. The Minister of Health found some of the money, and the Minister of Finance found some of the money.
Find money?
Distasteful.
My deepest regret.
Mrs. Simpson Miller, your cabinet colleagues told the country last year that you weren't capable of running the country. Shouldn't the country then accept their own assessment of you?
I agree with you, but
By the law, but not too long now.
Jamaica's leading election polls show the JLP ahead of the PNP.
Of course, in our political history, it is a rare opportunity to be given a second chance to lead our nation as it stands at a crossroads.
With Ethiopia or Nigeria.
Put your asses beside the bed. The proceeding was a paid announcement.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Speaker. I come from a generation that is liberated. Slavery is 350 years, 150 since free. We must understand that now is the time that we must defend our economic independence. And to do that, we must strike trade agreements with Africa. Don't come here and tell me about ancestor. Mr. Speaker, let me say this, that the $6 million that we spend flying, hold on.
On a point of order,
Hold on. I'm not giving a point of order. I was on my feet making a point and I would like to continue, Mr. Speaker. A point of order, sir. I would like to continue and I ask the House Leader to allow me. Please, allow me, House Leader. Let me finish my point. I want to finish the point. Mr. Speaker, as I said, in response to the intervention by the House Leader, if the Prime Minister, having had these answers prepared and foresight of them, which I did, if the answers are there, she could have said it. She could have said it. All I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, to you is that the 6.5 million spent on traveling to pay respect to ancestors could have been spent at Pinnacle. And that is where you would be paying respect to ancestors. Mr. Speaker, if it is that you want to just travel to pay respect to ancestors, you could spend it at Pinnacle.
Mr. Holness was, among other things, asking Mrs. Simpson Miller for a tally on government travels and the benefits.
I remember we had an extended debate about giving the 7 days. I understand that the Prime Minister will be traveling again. Any other country with a Prime Minister that had any decency or dignity or understanding of her job, she would have fired that minister long ago.
A smaller budget at the GIS with the advent of public broadcasting and live parliamentary coverage. This should no longer require large sums. Cut down on the army of consultants in ministries, departments and agencies. There's a lot of fat there. Equally, the program of developing competence in tax compliance has to be driven more aggressively, as there continues to be high levels of tax avoidance and tax evasion in this country. Why are we expending funds in this budget destroying marijuana, otherwise known as ganja fields, when Colorado and Canada want us to export it to them? Why? Money is in the budget for the eradication of ganja. Cut it out, chop down the tree them one by one, chop them up fine.
So the minister did come with new tax measures, the most controversial so far being the levy on financial withdrawal.
There have been howls of concerns from some quarters about the tax on withdrawing money from financial institutions. The Prime Minister told me on Tuesday that there has been misunderstanding about the tax. She wants her finance minister to clear it up.
This has prompted renewed discussions about Portia Simpson Miller's lack of competence and ability. The PNP's Peter Phillips, you'll recall, Portia was a disaster.
Stand from the minister's thing today to us at Cabinet is that the banks do take their charges as well, and that's like the bank charges, not like, I think some persons believe that if you go to the ATM, say 4 times for the month, you will have to pay And my understanding is that I think the minister himself need to explain this to the public that they can understand exactly what
that Portia was a disaster, adding that distasteful.
I asked the Prime Minister whether this won't all be passed on to deposit holders by banks already wary of increasing their own costs. She again stressed that the onus is on the Finance Minister to fully explain this to the public when he closes the debate next Wednesday.
Let me go through it again. For withdrawal of $100,000, it would be $10.
The second time wasn't quite the charm. He still got something wrong. It's actually $100 to withdraw $100,000, not $10.
Let me go through it again.
In any other country with a prime minister that had any decency or dignity or understanding of her job, she would have fired that minister long ago.
And one of this comment from the Prime Minister.
This is very serious.
For withdrawal of $100,000, it would be $10.
The second time wasn't quite the charm. He still got something wrong. It's actually $100 to withdraw $100,000, not $10.
You're saying, Prime Minister, that he won't withdraw this tax?
No, I can't say that.
That is what Jamaica needs to understand. You have a budget that you must finance, and there's a gap. And we have examined all the options. This was the least disruptive of
what about his prescription for example, cutting fat in the public service and so on, cutting the number of consultants, foreign travel and so on?
From the budget, contain expenditures.
Tax of his own to tax withdrawals. Shame.
Mr. Shaw then backed up his criticism of the minister's budget with proposals on how to raise the needed revenue without adding extra weight to the backs of an already overburdened working class.
The government should seek to identify areas of expenditure that can be tightened up. These include foreign travel and smaller delegations.
Yes! If we spend $6.5 million to go to Africa, the Prime Minister should come here and say, yes, I struck an economic deal with Ethiopia or Nigeria or South Africa. But don't just come here to tell me, Mr. Speaker, let me say this, that the $6 million that we spend flying. I remember we had an extended debate about giving the 7 days. I understand that the Prime Minister will be traveling again.
Mr. Holness was, among other things, asking Mrs. Simpson Miller for a tally on government travels and the benefits.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, in response to the intervention by the House Leader, if the Prime Minister, having had these answers prepared and foresight of them, which I did, if the answers are there, she could have said it. She could have said it. All I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, to you, if we spend $6.5 million to go to Africa, the Prime Minister should come here and say, yes, I struck an economic deal with Ethiopia or Nigeria or South Africa. But don't just come here to tell me. Let me tell you something, Mr. Speaker. I come from a generation that is liberated. Slavery is 350 years, 150 since free. We must understand that now is the time that we must defend our economic independence. And to do that, we must strike trade agreements with Africa. Don't come here and tell me about ancestor. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. $6.5 million spent on traveling to pay respect to ancestors could have been spent at Pinnacle. And that is where you would be paying respect to ancestors. Mr. Speaker, if it is that you want to just travel to pay respect to ancestors, you could spend it at Pinnacle.
Jamaica needs a budget that you must finance, and there's a gap. And we have examined all the options. This was the least disruptive of the options.
A smaller budget at the GIS with the advent of public broadcasting and live parliamentary coverage. This should no longer require large sums. Cut down on the army of consultants in ministries, departments and agencies. There's a lot of equally the program of developing competence in tax compliance has to be driven more aggressively as there continues to be high levels of tax avoidance and tax evasion in this country. Why are we expending funds in this budget destroying marijuana, otherwise known as ganja fields, when Colorado and Canada want us to export it to them to tax withdrawals? Shame.
So the minister did come with new tax measures, the most controversial so far being the levy on financial withdrawals. Said the government rejected a number of other measures which were proposed.
But Pernell Charles, the MP for North Central Clarendon, is querying whether this tax is even legal.
It's highway robbery.
What are you talking about? The withdrawal tax or the government?
Withdrawal tax. I think it's illegal. And I have referred to a group of lawyers to advise me on the legality of my money in the bank. And the bank is authorized to take my money and send to the government after I pay the bank and sign a contract with the bank to hold my money. I don't think they have that right.
It's clear the political battle lines are drawn after the finance minister took a swipe with his tax axe.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Andrew Holness has deplored the tax on withdrawals, calling it stupid and ill thought out. He underscored the point made by Mr. Shaw that the devaluation of the local currency is hurting the working class.
You know, I took a bus tour sometime last week, and it was very real, the hardship that people are facing. And a large part of it is due with the increases in prices, which are highly tied to the increases caused by the devaluation. And so Audley's focus on the devaluation is critical. It's important now.
Now, the finance minister sought to provide further details on the tax measures this morning ahead of the comments you heard a while ago. Dr. Phillips called it one of the smallest revenue packages in recent years.
What about his prescription for example, cutting fat in the public service and so on, cutting the number of consultants
without adding extra weight to the backs of an already overburdened working class?
The government should seek to identify areas of expenditure that can be tightened up. These include foreign travel and smaller delegations.
I understand that the Prime Minister will be traveling again.
So the minister did come with new tax measures, the most controversial so far being the levy on financial withdrawals. There is also grave concern about another of the government's revenue measures, an increase
on the heels of a new tax measure that will affect the industry. All alcoholic beverages, including white overproof rum, is now being taxed at a single rate of special consumption tax, SCT, of $1,120 per litre of pure alcohol. Now, this means the tourism sector will pay the standard rate of taxation instead of the concessionary rate it had previously enjoyed. The tourism minister was unwilling to provide a detailed response to the tax measure, saying he wants to have talks with hoteliers first.
Taxes are always difficult, and certainly the cabinet, we believe that we have to ensure that we continue to pass all our tests.
You are the elected leader, Mr. Simpson Miller. Let us hear your thoughts about it.
And for those calling for the tax to be withdrawn, the Prime Minister was non-committal.
I can't say that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying to you is that
Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller has told the CVM that some of the suggestions made by JLP spokesman on finance Audley Shaw in his budget presentation could be examined by her administration.
He made some suggestions that could be looked at.
In particular, which one, Prime Minister?
Mr. Shaw reasoned that the levy of $1 for each $1,000 withdrawn would only be the tip of the iceberg.
You know, I read the columns and I hear all the discussions. What I find is that people are very willing to just accept what is presented without a thorough interrogation of the options. Because you see, implicit in this argument which is being presented that this is a time of crisis, this is a matter of national importance, there is this great urgency. This present piece of legislation that you are hoping to amend does not in any way relieve the consideration that you are taking private funds. The only word that can describe government taking private funds without the consent of the persons giving it or of the persons who own it is expropriation. That's what it amounts to. You know, it wasn't any mistaken language when Michael Manley said it is the financial institution of the housing sector. Because effectively, this is where poor people would put their money, save it with that institution to get housing. Technically now, it is akin to you putting your money in the bank and the government going to the bank and say, give me the money. You want a better analogy? You want a better analogy? Oh no, that was good, but I'm giving you a better one. A better analogy, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure everyone in this country will understand. Michael Manley set up an institution like a partner, a revolving fund. You put in your money, when your turn comes, you get your benefit. What has happened now is that the government stick up the partner bank.
No, this is not his. No, this is not his.
I can read lips. Yes. I can read lips.
Okay.
He is too smart. I told you to ask me that. He is too smart. I think that he makes some suggestions that could be looked at.
In particular, which one, Prime Minister?
Looking at what else can be done.
Well, there is no clear word at this hour about how telephone service at the office of the Leader of the Opposition will be handled going forward after the service was disconnected. Outspoken opposition MP Everald Warmington raised the issue in Parliament yesterday and blamed the government for the disconnection. He said it was gross disrespect for the office located on Devon Road in St. Andrew.
This type of behavior must stop. This should never happen. Should never happen. This is disrespectful, and this is at the lowest level that we can descend in such regard. It is still disconnected. It's total disrespect.
But we can't hold somebody responsible. But I've never heard anybody calling for the then persons who were in charge to assume responsibility for what happened at a place where you were not present. If they had asked for something to be done, certainly we should look at it. We will move quickly to strengthen the existing mechanism. This is very serious.
An opposition senator and former People's National Party cabinet minister today told Gordon House that he's not convinced the party made enough of a difference in the lives of the poorest Jamaicans in nearly 20 years in office.
K.D. Knight was contributing to a debate on a motion brought by his colleague
Just about
Norman
every
Grant.
senator rose in support of Norman Grant's motion.
That the Senate call on the government of Jamaica to review, re-examine and relaunch on a national scale the Values and Attitudes program.
His opposition colleague K.D. Knight wasn't convinced that was enough. He said Jamaicans won't want to hear about values and attitudes if they live in squalor. And he said he wasn't convinced the administration of which he had been a part for about 20 years had done enough to change the circumstances of the poorest.
My deepest regret
that there are 2 babies affected.
Distasteful.
This is serious
business between life and death.
I would have to check. I would never depend on my brain about a specific question as you have asked me. What I will tell you is that I know there was a discussion on raised about
Jamaica's leading election polls show the JLP ahead of the PNP.
That is the way of progress.
It is through your actions that prosperity will be your victory. When I meet people in the communities, in the markets, or at church, or reason with youths on the corner, or talk to business people, they all share a common vision. They all want prosperity. The school leaver on the corner tells me, I am 26, I left school 6 years ago, and I have not worked. He was just about to pack his bag in frustration and leave when we just happened onto the scene, and his mother came up to us and said, please come and talk to my son. I don't want him to go leave home, to go Kingston, to go look for a job because I don't know what might happen to him. But the young man was frustrated because he's sitting at home at 26, nothing to do, can't contribute, doesn't see his life going anywhere. So he's going to go out there and get it and take a chance. So the youth man saying to me, all I want, Mr. Holness, is a job. I want to work for my own. The mother struggling to send her child back to school. She wants help with the fees because through education, that mother sees prosperity in the success of her child. The farmer and the market vendor, they show me the stunted, orange, sunburnt ground provisions. No water in their fields, no water in their homes. They want water. Water will make life more convenient for all, and water will make their fields lush, green, and growing, the sure sign of prosperity. They want housing or the finance to acquire and improve their housing. Owning a piece of the rock, having the refuge and shelter of your own home is prosperity. And when I hear the elderly and mothers complain about how long they have to wait at the hospitals to get attention, and the lack of drugs and the cost of health care generally, they have a dim view of recovery in Jamaica. Health is an important part of prosperity. The rich man and the poor man alike are worried about crime, murders in particular. You know, too often I have to be consoling a grieving relative. Whether it is the wife of a policeman or the mother of a child who has been abducted, raped, and killed. And there's nothing that I really can say or do. But you know, I'm sure that every Jamaican is worried about crime when we consider that any one of us here has a greater chance of being murdered than by being hit by a car. Every Jamaican wants to know that their children are safe and their property is secure. We are all yearning for a peaceful society. Prosperity can only be achieved in a safe environment, and we can only enjoy prosperity in peace. A Jamaica at peace with itself, where murder and mayhem is not the daily feature on our news or at our doorsteps. A Jamaica where if you fulfill your part of the social contract, stay out of trouble, and diligently pursue your education, then there will be a job for you to start life, take care of your responsibilities, and save something. A Jamaica where in a place we all love dearly and call yard, our homeland, that we will one day fulfill our dream of owning a home. A Jamaica where you can have reliable water in your fields and in your homes. Where if you get sick, your only option is not just to live with the sickness because you can't afford healthcare, but you can get treatment when you need it, knowing that there is a healthcare plan for you. A Jamaica where every child is guaranteed access to quality education, whether you are a vocational or an academic person, whether you are rich or whether you are poor, whether you're bright or not so bright, whether you exhibit behavioral problems, not to be let go. Every Jamaican child is entitled to a place in the Jamaican education system. It is through education that we will share values and modify our behavior to live together in peace. That we will learn that violence is never the right way to resolve conflicts. That we will create the human capital and the knowledge base to grow Jamaica from poverty to prosperity. I believe in education for all.
People wait. Roll call, roll call. Do your name. Do the name of call. This one name of call. Burner name of call. Fahim name of call. Popsy name of call. Marissa name of call. Hunter name of call. Portia name of call at all.
P.
Let us vote for the Jamaica Labour Party. Make them know. Vote for Labour. Grab your neighbor, vote for Labour. Tell your neighbor to vote for Labour. Everybody just vote for Labour. Our leader is a young man. We can depend on to lead us. This is simply a new Jamaica, we want to see Jamaica Labour Party. Vote for Labour. Make we vote for Labour.
Vote JLP. Put your ex beside the
Labour Party. Vote for Labour. Make we vote for Labour.
Vote JLP. Put your ex beside the bell.
In this election, for real, let us vote for the Jamaica Labour Party. Make them know. Vote for Labour. Is a young man. We can depend on to lead us. This is simply to be a new Jamaica. We want to see Jamaica Labour Party. Vote for Labour. Make we vote for Labour.
Vote JLP. Put your ex beside the bell.